Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents. Today, I'm speaking with Tori Eldridge, the author of The Ninja Daughter, which is the first book in a series which was nominated for an Anthony, a Lefty, and a McCavity Awards. It also won the Authors on the Air Thriller Book of 2019, and then The Ninja Betrayed, book 3 in the series, was IndieBound National Bestseller, an Anthony Award finalist, and a 2022 Crimson Scribe Award winner for the best book of the year. Today, we're going to talk about The Ninja's Blade. I'll show you the cover really quick, which is book 2 in the series. And the series is about Lily Wong, a girl of Chinese and Norwegian descent, and she's a modern day ninja. Welcome, Tori. It's so great to talk to you today.
Hey, Tracy. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I loved this book. Lily is such a character. Oh my gosh, she's intense and she's fearless. And the book just opens with a pow.
I'm very fond of the Ninja's Blade, so I'm really glad you dove right into that.
Yeah. So it begins with like a chase scene, and Lily is kicking ass, and she doesn't let up for the entire book. So can you give the readers a little bit of background about Lily and maybe your inspiration for the series?
Okay. Well, all right. Inspiration for the series. I hold a 5th degree black belt in Toshindo ninja martial arts. So one of my big goals was to demystify and bust through the stereotype of ninja and show a modern day ninja, especially a woman. Because I don't think most people have that idea. You know, they're thinking Ninja Turtles and right. Assassins and all this kind of stuff. So that was one. The other inspiration is my mother was Chinese Hawaiian and my father was Norwegian from North Dakota. And I wanted to pay homage to my own heritage. That's not something I've ever seen in books. A Chinese Norwegian, modern day ninja. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, were you just trying to think up the weirdest combination?" I'm like, no. I was sharing my heritage with you. So that was another thing. And then I love mysteries and thrillers. So I wanted to entwine it all in a puzzle, intrigue, and action. So that's kind of where all this came from, this idea. Lily herself is, she's 25. She's coming of age, trying to figure out her place as an adult in this world after suffering through some major family trauma. Her 15-year-old sister was raped and murdered on the same night that Lily loses her virginity her first year in college. Very traumatic. A lot of unearned guilt, a lot of baggage carrying on. Her whole family, her mother from Hong Kong, high-powered financier, and her father, the Norwegian father, is an authentic Hong Kong cuisine chef and owns a restaurant. He owns the restaurant, not the mother. And Lily lives on the 2nd floor of his apartment. And she when her sister is raped and murdered, she abandons her wushu training that she had been doing since she was a child and focuses only on the ninja training she's been doing in secret since she was 12, and decides to become a protector of women, sort of a big sister to a city after failing as a big sister to her sister, right? Yeah. And so she lives above her father's restaurant, and she works with a women's shelter nearby in Culver City, run by this fabulous woman from Compton and her delightful husband from New York. And so there's this wide cast of characters. And in the book that you read, she does a deep dive into the commercial sex trafficking of youth.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit too. I read in your bio too that you used to do seminars on self-defense for women.
Yeah. I taught, regularly here in Southern California, but I also was invited to travel all over the United States, giving seminars and workshops in the ninja arts, in weaponry, especially long weapons and, swords, bow, knife, ground fighting, all sorts of things, but also women's empowerment and women's self-defense, which I probably approached in a very different way than most self-defense workshops. I started it by getting everybody in a circle, sitting down there, and just looking at everybody going, what do you want to know? What are you most afraid of? Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And we just went from there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's
so
really exciting to me.
Empowerment's big with me.
Yeah, I took some martial arts for a few years. I never got any belts or anything, but the weapon study and all of that is so intriguing. And clearly, what you're talking about when these fight scenes, with the locks and the way you're describing how she takes down these much bigger guys. So
yeah, a lot of it is taken from the way in which I used to fight, a lot of the things that I did, things that I've taught, things that friends of mine do. So I think it is as authentic as I can. That's important to me.
Absolutely. And Lily is super tough. She is, I think, maybe too willing to put herself into dangerous situations.
She's young.
Yeah, to be 25.
She's 25. You remember all the mistakes we made at 25? You never feel more powerful, more invincible, more, that idealistic, right? That's an age. And it's also the age where, I don't know about anybody else, where early 20s, where I made my biggest mistakes. So, she does tend to jump in with both feet and then, figure out how to survive.
Does, but it's really good that she's working with the Alicia's Refuge, which is a shelter for abused women. And I suppose she connected with them in book 1, right? And so tell us a little bit about her story with them.
Yeah, so in the backstory, in the first book, she's already working with them. Right. So, in the backstory, she finds her way to them as she's helping women and, they kind of lead to this. But it's a wonderful shelter with women and children. And Lily works rescuing and protecting. And a lot of it is also extraction. And in combination with that, she keeps her ear out. So like in the Ninja Daughter, she's actually, in the midst of trying to help a woman and a child that have escaped abuse from a man who turns out to be tangled with the Los Angeles Ukrainian mob. But at the same time, she's intrigued by this and horrified by this poor woman, this cocktail waitress who's getting victim shamed in the press because a man snuck into her apartment and tried to strangle her. But he's like sexy and cool and all this and rich and all this kind of stuff, right? And nobody is believing her and she's getting victim shamed. And Lily's like so frustrated with the case that she's trying to help that isn't working that she goes and helps this woman.
Yeah.
So you have these two parallel cases that are coming up at the same time as Lily tangles with this kind of enigmatic assassin person, and also trying to protect this woman and child.
Right.
So that's how she's in there.
She gets involved with trying to help women or children get away from sex traffickers.
Yeah, that's very much the Ninja's Blade. So in the Ninja's Blade, Lily Wong meets a teenager who has escaped from the life. And a few chapters later, she is abducted. And so it becomes a hunt to find Emma Hughes. And on the way, she's meeting and encountering other compromised teens who are getting sucked into and lured into this life. Commercial sex trafficking of youth is a huge problem everywhere, but especially, in Los Angeles, we're a big city. There's a lot of that targeted. And so I wanted to, so many of my books, I start with research rather than a plot and then research it. My plot, my characters even come out of research. So after writing The Ninja Daughter, I knew I wanted to look more into this. And so I researched it for months. And out of that came the characters, all the sub characters of all the teens and the storyline. And my goal was to through these characters and these situations to show a variety of ways that all sorts of kids are getting lured, coerced, forced into this life, so that you have these different points of view, so that hopefully, the reader is looking at this and realizing this isn't just this community's problem, it's all of our problems.
Right. Well, and I think you open the doors on that a little bit too, because, I think it's important for people to know that these girls think that their traffickers love them, they take care of them, they think that, they think, well, this guy thinks I'm so special, and really they're just being manipulated.
Yeah, some of the girls do feel that way. Not all. Again, there's so many ways these girls get sucked into it. There's so many relationships and perspectives and mind games that are getting played on them. But yes, the whole Romeo strategy of luring them in. There are some girls that get lured in thinking that they're in love, and then to prove themselves, all of a sudden their lover is asking them to do these things, and little by little they get sucked in. But there are others who don't get in that way. There are some who are kidnapped in that way. There are some that are forced, that are bribed, or who, aren't even thinking that they're in love, but are thinking that this is the way out to a better life. There are so many points of view, and
it does
I really
hit
wanted to look at them
all cultures and everyone. I mean, everyone could be a target, so I'm glad that you shed light on it. I feel like it's a really important
and it was
subject.
important to me too that while there are certain neighborhoods where the blade is like the tracks, it's kind of another generic term, but there actually is a section in Los Angeles on Long Beach Boulevard, which is kind of known as the Blade. So that's the double entendre of Lily's, and she loves her karambit knife, so that's the double entendre in the title. But so even though there are certain communities that are there, I wanted to make sure that we're looking at all sorts of girls from all sorts of ethnicities. Emma Hughes is white, she's privileged. That's the first one that goes missing. That's the MacGuffin that leads Lily into this world.
Right. So another thing that you do really well in this is showing her interactions with the law enforcement.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I liked that there was conflict there between her and the police officer, Officer Paynes. And it surprised me that he was like, get out of there, don't be involved in this. But he was doing his job. And anyway, I liked that part too.
I'm glad. I have a lot of cop friends. In fact, some of my my personal ninja students were in law enforcement as well. So, so that's nice. And I always try and show kind of a balanced view. Even from the Ninja Daughter, you see that Lily has kind of a complicated relationship with law enforcement. They never found her sister's murderer. Lily did. And so she has a little bit of lack of confidence in there, and yet she also has a strong sense of, doing the right thing and things like that. But she gets in trouble with them. She gets in trouble with them in The Ninja Daughter. She gets in trouble with them with The Ninja's Blade, where, she's interfering in things where a civilian is not supposed to be interfering, and she doesn't always get well received. So, Pains can be forgiven for not wanting some 25-year-old, gal, getting into a situation
right,
that is potentially exceedingly dangerous. And then, of course, when people start getting injured, he starts getting a bit suspicious about her.
yeah, and rightly so, I think.
Yes, I think so too. I like Pains,
Yeah.
and so that's important to me, that his point of view was justified, as was her, and their conflict was justified, and everybody was kind of working from their own angle, and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
tricky. It was a very tricky situation.
And I also loved all of the Chinese, the detailed descriptions of the Chinese traditions and all of the food.
Oh my gosh, there's so much food. The whole series. There are people, I am convinced there are readers who read this series primarily for the food.
I bet.
I personally am always hungry when I'm writing, but you know why I do it? For me, if you really want to get to understand a culture, one of the biggest ways is through their food. What we eat, how we eat it, the rituals around what we eat. It's huge. It's very important. I feel the same way about my Hawaiian culture. And I am, and I'm sure my father and his siblings felt that way about, Norwegian cooking too. Although, gefilte fish, I don't know.
I don't understand that either.
It's rough. Lutefisk is, that's a rough one. But the pancake, ooh, those are yummy. So I really like to show those details. In The Ninja Daughter, there's more of the Norwegian as well as the Chinese, but in The Ninja's Blade, because Lily's grandparents are coming in from Hong Kong for her mother's 50th birthday, bash, big birthday bash, a lot of stress around there. So there's a lot of Chinese culture happening because those grandparents are underfoot in the city, in the midst of all of this stuff that Lily's trying to do.
Right. And it braided together very nicely. It was really
I'm
great.
glad.
Yeah.
I love her grandparents. I love to write about her grandparents. Her grandmother is so cute, and her grandfather is so, gosh, he's quite a character.
So I can't wait to see what else happens to Lily. Are there going to be more books in the series?
Well, the Ninja Betrayed, the jade colored one right there, that's the third book, and that takes Lily and her mother to Hong Kong in the midst of the 2019 pro-democracy protests, while her mother is under corporate assault by within her father's company, the board, frenemies, relations. There's all sorts of things. And the guy that her family has been setting her up with since book 1, and who she goes on a date with in book 2, happens to be in Hong Kong. And so they actually have a chance to truly go out, and that's more terrifying to Lily than fighting with triads or mobsters or anybody. That's a huge source of angst. So I love that book. That's a Ninja Betrayed. Now I'm just actually, when this airs, perhaps the announcement will be made in Publishers Marketplace. I'm not sure, but Polis Books, the Agora Books imprint, they're going to be publishing the 4th book in hardback, The Ninja's Oath. And The Ninja's Oath takes Lily to Shanghai and then to Osaka, Japan.
Oh.
And it is the most action-packed, emotional book I've written yet. It's, it brings back a lot of very favorite characters, friends, enemies, and really dives into more about Sensei's story in there too, which I'm sure a lot of readers, especially from the first book, are dying to learn more about. So it's really meant to kind of round out this 4-book set.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and
Very
I hear
exciting.
it's set to come out fall of 2023. So, oh my gosh, yikes.
Very exciting. And I just wanted to touch on one other thing before we talk about Dance Among the Flames. Another thing you did really well was that you bring in a lot of characters of color in this book. And I was wondering if you have any like recommendations. What advice would you give to authors who want to give variety of characters in their writing?
Oh, well, that's a good question, and it's a good point too, because while Lily draws from my own heritage, and interestingly enough, just on a fluke, Lily's mother and my daughter-in-law's mother are both from Hong Kong. So my granddaughter and Lily share the same maternal roots. Isn't that interesting? I found that out later after the fact, but how interesting. But as you say, many of my characters, especially in the book you read, The Ninja's Blade, and even the core reoccurring characters like Alicia, who runs Alicia's Refuge. She's Black from Compton. Her husband, Stan, he's a New York Jew and former stockbroker. The characters, the main characters in The Ninja's Blade, the teenagers are Black and Latina and white, and so they're also looking at a bunch of different ethnicities, and I'm diving into their cultures. And so it was very important to me to get a sense of that, because that's not part of my my heritage. So as I mentioned before, I spend a lot of time researching before I write a book. A lot of that research was diving into culture. I mean, it's even more than I have so many friends, from these backgrounds. I really wanted to dive into the music. I wanted to dive into, the media, of what they are watching, what they value, the issues they want. I cannot tell you how many hair videos I watched, because it's a huge part, and it's a big part in coercing some of the young Black teenagers, the things that can be offered. So even things like that were hugely important. Food, reading. So many of the books that I read are from Black authors and Latina, especially Latina, but some Latin, some men as well, authors. The majority of the books that I read are from authors of color, mostly because I like my thrillers and my mysteries and my literary fiction. I love all of those things, but I also want to learn about new things.
Yeah.
Even if it's a Caucasian character, I want to dive into their area of Southern culture. I want to dive into their culture in Alaska. I dig that. That's what I want to do. So if you're going to write about somebody else's culture, I really recommend reading, enjoying, diving into all of the things they write, they create, and that they enjoy, until you find yourself truly loving that culture, so that you can come from a place of depth, and then from there you can write an individual,
right?
Because if you just kind of give it a cursory glance, 99% of the time what you're going to come up with is a generic stereotype.
Right.
You're not going to come up with a three-dimensional person.
Not,
and there is no character that speaks for an entire group of people.
Right.
Don't even try. Don't even go there. You want to be writing a three-dimensional, fully developed individual character that organically comes from and intertwines in their personal way with their culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tall order,
It
and
is.
then once you do that, you might want to run it by some eyeballs.
Yeah. Get a sensitivity reader.
That helps. That helps.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
if you're fortunate enough to have friends who
Right.
are, of a particular whatever you're writing, it's
Right.
a nice thing to just kind of see if they'll be a beta
Yeah.
reader. You can tell them why or not.
Yeah.
Usually when I select beta readers, it's for a particular reason.
Mhm.
I'll read the whole thing, but pay particular attention to
Right.
whatever it is I'm hoping they are an expert or, personally involved with.
Right. Now, absolutely. And that's really great advice. And I think it's so important these days, because it's too hard to stick with to write a book that doesn't include people from around the world,
Because our daily lives include
or
people from
people from
around the
around
world.
the
I mean, I
world.
don't know where you might live
Right.
that you only encounter white people. But
Yeah.
here in Los Angeles, we have 400 languages spoken in this city.
That's
400.
amazing.
I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't even name 400 languages. So just in daily life, who are the people that are present in that life? I want that in my literature. I want
Yes,
that in my stories.
exactly. And they should be there. So you have one other standalone, right? Dance Among the Flames.
Yeah. That
Hey.
pretty little thing over my shoulder.
Yeah. And I have
And
that too.
speaking of writing in other cultures, okay, so Dance Among the Flames is about a desperate mother who rises from the slums of Bahia, Brazil, to
Wow.
become a fearsome wielder of dark Kimbanda magic. And Kimbanda comes from the Brazilian spiritualism. That is an amalgamation of African Yoruba and indigenous traditions in Brazil, and also the Catholicism brought over by the Portuguese slave traders and, pioneers, I suppose you would say, colonials, colonists, right? And so it's an amalgamation of that, because back then, the slaves weren't allowed to, to follow their Yoruba. That wasn't okay to,
Right.
be following their worshiping and their Yoruba traditions. So they connected those gods, they syncretized them to Catholic saints and and also the indigenous tribal characters, so that it was palatable, right?
Uh-huh.
And so that became this spiritualism. And when I learned about this, because again, that came from research, when I learned about this, I went nuts. And I was researching all manner. I fell in love with the whole Umbanda, also called Candomblé, spiritualism. And then I learned about the dark side of Kumbanda, and the horror writer in me was like, oh yes, please. And so I was diving into that. And so when I wanted to dive into this, I'm like, okay, well, who would my protagonist be and where would she come from? And I'm like, well, obviously she would be Afro-Brazilian and coming in from, or I wanted her to come in from these, stilt shack slums that I had read about and watched documentaries about. And I wanted her to be fighting, all manner of social abuse. She's dealing with physical abuse, emotional abuse, colorism, bigotry, poverty, and she's trying to empower herself and dig out of this. And she discovers this benevolent Umbanda religion, but she has so much going on in her that how sometimes when we carry a lot of baggage or we carry a lot of pain, we don't always see things the way everybody else does. Yeah. Well, Serafina Olegario has a particular way of seeing things, and she ends up turning to Kimbanda and on this course of revenge. But this thing is epic. I mean, it covers 40 years, 3 continents, a past life in 1560 France. It's crazy.
Wow.
And it is very kind of like, literary and almost historical fiction, the way it dives into all that. But I got to tell you, the last quarter of it is as thrilling, action paced, excitement as any book I've ever written.
Well, now I can't wait to read that one.
Well, and you've got it on your shelf.
I
So
do. It's right here.
it's very different, though. I always warn my Lily Wong readers,
Yeah.
And so many of them have told me how much they love that. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, I was amazed when Oline Cogdill reviewed it, because she normally reviews mystery and thriller. But she came to me during a conference and says, I'd like to review this book, send me a copy. And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
And she really dug it. So I was like, well, that's really cool. But I do
Exciting.
like to warn my Lily Wong readers, just
That's
heads
great.
up. This thing has got some dark stuff, serious things, and sex. So,
Perfect. I love it.
brace yourself. All of that could make you say, yes, that's for me. But, at the same time, I just want to forewarn my readers.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Tori, it's been really great talking to you. Could you please let the viewers know where to find you or your books?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You know what? Google Tori Eldridge, and you are going to find more than you ever wanted to know. My website is torieldridge.com. And from there, you can find me. I love Instagram, so fun with all the pictures. That's writer.tori. And then basically, Twitter, Facebook. If you start searching for Tori Eldridge, you're going to find me.
All right. That's great. Thank you so much for talking today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Bye-bye now.